Third Sunday of Lent. We're doing okay? Y'all seem so excited. It's kind of a dreary little day, but here we go. All righty. We've kind of had a really busy, crazy week with, as you know, the announcement last week of how we're going forward with worship in this interim period and music. As you will notice, the professional moving company came and moved those pianos in no time at all. And the tuner will be here this week, but most people, it'll be just fine for today. And I heard it, and Laura heard it, and I said, close enough. But we wanted to get it up and rolling. That's just the kind of way I like to do things. Hey, it's here. Let's get moving. And so the handbell choir's playing this morning, so we didn't need the choir, so we didn't need the keyboard, but we're getting all that in place as well. Reg and I have been running around this week grabbing chords here and there and getting it all to go, but we're excited that, and we'll have its own mic. So my lay reader today, she is going to read just during worship and have to be ready to go there. There's all that, but the crazy thing was the movers showed up early, and at the same time the tractor trailer truck pulled in with some of the beginnings of the playground equipment all at the same time, and so they were both going, "Hey, where do you want us to go?" And I was like, "Well," so I was like, here, here, and here. So it was kind of an interesting moment. So we're going to look at Corinthians today. I thought I do try to bounce around sometimes, and on a given Sunday morning, 75% of all the people who stick to lectionary are going to pick the gospel lesson, and I probably fall in that same amount. And so every once in a while, I make myself go, let's go to the Old Testament lesson, or let's go to the epistle lesson. And I've always had this great affection for 1 Corinthians because the church was a real mess, and yet Paul even chose to thank God for them and called them saints. And so I just kind of thought, well, if this church that's such a mess can be saints and be thankful, and Paul can be thankful for them, then I got a shot at, being a disciple and a saint as well. And so I've always loved this book, and of course, having grown up in a kind of a Pentecostal setting, it has a lot in it about Pentecostal type worship. And so I just how he deals with those things, and the pragmatic, matter-of-fact ethic that Paul has is in this book, based on your love for Jesus Christ and the cross, that it's kind of a neat way that he shows his faith. So Corinth, it's a major kind of hub of where people come and go, and merchandise is being exchanged. They're known for their mirrors of that day. That's when you get to chapter 13, and he talks about, looking in the mirror dimly, but then we'll see face to face. Well, their mirrors were pretty much polished metal, so it was still kind of a hazy image that you saw. So he's using things that they could relate to and see in a daily basis. Also, these are Gentiles he's preaching to, and this is, again, a hub where people come and go. Merchandise is coming and going. And so what a better place that you go spread the gospel there, because then this person comes, they hear the gospel, and then what do? They're out of town, and they're going to go share it somewhere else. It's a great place for spread. Also, though, being Gentile and predominantly pagan, there are a lot of temples in Corinth, and the probably the most notable one was Aphrodite temple that's kind of up on the hill and kind of shines down. Well, Aphrodite is the goddess of love and beauty, and so there was You do the part of the worship there. They employed a lot of. I'll have to say it in a different way during the sermon with other people, but prostitutes for the worship, and that was a part of the worship. You would go and you would pay, and that was to help bring about a prosperous, whatever you did, have a prosperous crop or whatever, and that was a part of the worship. I don't know what that looks like, works like, but there you go. And so that was big in that community. There were a lot of other temples as well. And so Paul is dealing with this church in the middle of all this, and they're coming out of that culture, and he's asking them, put that culture aside, which was very common, and that's what they understood in their life. And it was a part of their economic, system of the community. So when Paul comes in and says, hey, this is Jesus, this is how we follow Jesus, we don't fall into him, immorality. And so to them, he's saying, this is totally counter to your culture, what I'm asking you to be. And so it sounds, when somebody tells you, hey, this is your culture, this is what you've always known, this is how you do it, don't do it that way anymore. That's not who we are. You go, well, that's foolish. I mean,
Well, that's not any different than the Jews. They
Yeah,
converted.
right.
Told the same things.
Yeah, that's true. There is this kind of, it's an expansion, at least from them. And you're right. So, yeah, this is a little different than what you're used to. But here it's a major cultural shift. And it involves, and as long, you can mess with people's religion all you want. But when you start messing with their money, that's when people go, hold up a second. So that's kind of some of the basis, and also this is kind of what they call incipient Gnosticism of the day too that he's fighting over against, where we have this gnosis or knowledge that that was starting to filter into the Christian faith too, that flesh is bad, spirit's good. So God couldn't have become God. There's no way that Jesus could be a real human being because flesh is bad. Jesus might be, but the Christ and Jesus are two different things. Christ comes into Jesus and leaves Jesus. When the Spirit comes down in baptism and enters Jesus, and then when he's on the cross, he said, "Why have you forsaken me?" Because you can't have pain, and you can't have hurt and those kind of things for the Christ. That just is not in Gnosticism. So you're fighting over those notions too as well. And people, if you have gnosis or knowledge, well, you have this special knowledge, and I've got it and y'all don't. So if you were as spiritual as me, you'd have it, but you're not. So that's kind of going on here too. And Paul tells them, some of y'all are acting smart, but I know your family. And so, and that's in chapter 1. And so he's just like, no, sorry, don't do that. And which is, there is a lot of sarcasm in this gospel, in this letter, or kind of, he's kind of, he's being a little snarky. It doesn't come across necessarily in the English, but there's some of that stuff that's coming in too when he's kind of mocking this knowledge that some of them have. And so with that kind of as the backdrop, we go into this passage today in chapter 1. It's a fractured community. They're not getting along. I've told you, as I've mentioned, but I'll go back. They had the love feast on Sunday nights after they got off work. They got at home. Some people got there early. They ate the food first and didn't leave any for the folks that come later. They got there first. They drank the wine, got drunk. Some of them were speaking in tongues and saying, hey, we're more spiritual than the rest of you. Y'all just need to, we've got the gnosis. You don't. If you were spiritual as me, you'd get it. Used to have that youth leader growing up. Remember, he'd tell us that same thing. If you were spiritual as me, you'd understand, but you don't. So you just listen to me. Gotcha. And so there's an inappropriate relationship in chapter 5 with a man and his father's wife. Not clear that it's his mom, it's his dad's wife. And I don't need, and I know, yeah, just move on, yeah. And the whole speaking in tongues thing is going on. I know. So, and Paul's dealing with all of these kind of crazy things, and yet he tells them, you're still saints, and I thank God for you. Basically, they're a church. Okay, they're out there, but they're a church. And here we go with this part, verse 18 through 31, chapter 1. For the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God the world did not know God through wisdom, God decided through the foolishness of our proclamation to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs, and Greeks desire wisdom. But we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those who are the called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than the human strength. Consider your call, your own call, brothers and sisters. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were powerful, and not many were of noble birth. See, he's how, wow. Yeah. I know. And can you just see me standing and preaching this as a sermon? Hey, y'all, I know y'all. Jeez, oh, wow. Great way to get fired. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. And again, and he said, I hope y'all are getting this right. He's saying, y'all aren't that clever, but God's using you anyway. God chose what is low and despised in the world, things that are not, to reduce to nothing things that are, so that no one might boast in the presence of God. He is the source of your life in Christ Jesus, who became for us wisdom from God and righteousness and the sanctification and redemption, in order that, as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. Familiar? Parts of it? Yeah. Not exactly something you'd sew into a pillow for your, for your living room, Yeah, no, even some of the lines, would you really, want to say that? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So what did y'all hear? Uh-huh. Right. Okay. Yeah, are we good over here? Oh. Yikes. If he doesn't find it, God wants us to have it here. Okay. So that aside, you're right. Okay, so this proclamation or preaching basically is that Christ and Him crucified, right? What verse was that? I'm sorry. 23. Fine. Yeah. But we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. But to those that are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. Right. So what is he trying to get across about Christ? That this death on the cross, and let's think about it. I mean, it's a criminal's death. It's an outsider's death. It's not a pretty picture. It's an ugly picture. I mean, we can cutesy up crosses all we want and put them around our necks and gold and the like, but it's a really, really awful scene, and we're saying this is kind of the place of redemption, and that's our proclamation, that this is kind of the center and the source. And for Paul, this is everything. I mean, his letters did come out before the Gospels, and so Corinthians has a quote, and Corinthians he quotes the institutional aspect for communion. He does quote Jesus there. But through the rest of his writings, Paul is never quoting Jesus or saying, well, Jesus said, da-da-da. Now, possibilities. His letters came out before the Gospels. It could be he didn't have sayings. For the most part, though, I think for Paul's issue is what Christ did is the issue, not what Christ said. His life, his death, his resurrection, that is the focus of what Paul is trying to get across to the Gentiles to become a part of the faith. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ is everything. And he's saying, this is what we're going to preach. This is the proclamation. And that is, it may seem foolish to other people that that's what you bank and hang your religion and your life on. But to God, this makes sense. Again, over the backdrop of this culture that they've been a part of, this kind of religious immorality, economic thing that they have going on. Sir? What? Say more about that. It's going on today. I love it.
They're still sinning. They're still living by society.
Mm-hmm.
Following, I don't know what you call them. Following culture, I guess.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Instead of following.
Yeah.
Through their foolishness, through their own lies.
Yeah. Right.
Through their stupidity.
Right.
That, I mean, it's still happening.
Right.
As it says, you know, boast in him
Yeah,
and
right.
even the foolish.
Right.
That's where your boast is.
And let's think about it. Here y'all are today, sitting in this room. It's 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. For some of you, you have to get up and go to work tomorrow. We encourage y'all to come sit in this space, to come connect with each other, to give your time, your different talents, your money, and listen to me talk about this stuff. And you could be doing so many other things. And on a day like this, I don't need a show of hands. I got a pretty good idea. I mean, when it's kind of dreary, it would be easier for y'all to go, why do I even need to go out? I can just have a cup of coffee, read the paper. Well, if we read the paper, you know what I mean.
So yet we chose to come here
But-
and call stupid.
And be called stupid. Well, if you're going to put it that way. Yeah. Okay. So, and this notion that over against this culture that tells us, really we just need to be in this for ourselves. The cross tells us, Jesus said, no, that's really not what we're called to be. We share who we are. We share our lives. We lose our life, as we said last week, for each other and for others. And there's this, and that's what we're called to do. And to a lot of people, that will seem foolish. I'll never forget this moment when it became really, really, really real to me. Because, on Sundays, you kind of go to church, and growing up, you'd go to church for a couple hours, and and then you'd just kind of have your day, and then you'd go back to church or whatever. But when I was a student at divinity school, and Candace had been born, and so I went over I worked in the urban ministry during the week, but on the weekends, the weeknights and weekends, I worked at a church in Raleigh called Hudson Memorial, and so it was like a 35-minute drive, maybe 40, but so I'd go, and then so when I was finished on Sunday morning, I would come back home, and be driving through, so I'd be, I'd have preacher clothes on, and maybe a collar, and so I would, back then when I was wearing those, but I'd stop and get gas or stop and get something, and standing in line one day, and it was just one day, it was so obvious. All these people that were in line were wearing shorts and stuff. They were headed out with their boats to the lake, and there I'm the only one in this convenience store. Obvious. And the weirdness that it never became so real to me in that moment of what an oddball I was in the room, and how people, it was almost, maybe they weren't projecting this at all, maybe they didn't care, but it just made me feel like, boy, you are weird. No, I'm beyond my other weirdness, but because of just, and I was like, wow, I do get this. This is really, really goofy, and what I'm asking other people to do and be a part of. I'm like, it was just strange, and that has stuck with me for all these years. I still think about that day and go, yeah, that was pretty weird. But and it can happen now too, Last week we took the kids to Gibson Mill to eat for after, just as a youth out, just so we could be somewhere else. And there was another group of people that you could tell they had been to church, but for the most part, probably, if you're going to read the room, we were kind of out of, because I'm sitting there, I didn't have time to bring clothes and change out, and there we were, and you just go, yeah, there's a culture going on out there that we are not a part of in a lot of ways. And that's exactly what Paul is saying here about this faith. Hey, this is not that we're odd on, okay, look how weird I can be. I don't need Jesus for that. But there is a counterculture part that we are involved in, for sure. We are called a peculiar people. In Peter, I think that this, peculiar people. I love that. Called out, and that's right.
I do feel like,
Yeah.
I'm going to show my age. When I was younger, it was less standoutish as far as stores were all closed on
Mm-hmm.
Sunday.
Right.
After church, if we did go up to a diner or something, which was like an odd thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where now it's
Yeah.
you don't still have that same culture where now it's like everything's open.
Right.
Not as many people go to church. You don't have families
No.
seeing them but yelling at the other drivers on the road, now nobody's on the road.
Yeah,
So, there was some things to complain about them.
right.
It feels different, that's all.
It is, yeah, but then again, and then we have that, you have that balance of do I want, do, maybe this is the way it's supposed to be instead of like the laws of it can be say, oh, you can't have your store open on Sunday, that it's, that instead of it being dictated through law that we, this is how we live it as opposed to that. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm, true. It doesn't seem like a great economic, maneuver. Yeah, yeah, right, yeah. Right. It's interesting, right? That,
Become a society, we want our cake and eat it too.
right,
We want the
Yeah.
best of both
Yeah.
worlds.
Yeah.
And we're not, we
yeah,
just want it handed to us rather than working for it.
True.
Because it does take that effort. It
Right.
does take that work
mm-hmm,
to be there and to that dedication.
right. It does, yeah, you're right. I mean, but of course, then again, and too, thinking about Sundays too, the argument is, well, most people who go to church go out to eat. Well, you can't go out to eat if you're asking somebody else to work. That's him. Right. But, so, so there is this call in what Paul is saying, I guess is what we're all saying today, is that there's this notion of this cross as, there was a book, was it Niebuhr? God. Christ that's against culture, Christ that's over culture, Christ that's in culture, against culture, above culture. And I'd have to go back. It's been a long time since I've read it. But this notion of that there are places where Christ is involved in the culture. There is a place where Christ stands over against culture. And there's a place where Christ stands over. And so we think about that as well in this place, that Paul is saying, hey, guess what? This might sound foolish to other folks. And he does break it down too, doesn't he? The proclamation to those who Savior believe. Oh gosh, where's it at? Yeah, but the notion that for those who are perishing, it is foolishness, but those who are being saved, 18, thank you. Yes, it's foolishness to those who are perishing, but to those who are being saved, it is the power of God. So there is this great distinction that he's putting in about culture, or about people. There's this way and there's this way, and he's trying to point it out to these folks who are in this culture, and he's asking a lot of them, because he's saying this is how you grew up, this is how you know. This whole other host of gods that are there in that community, and that's the way they do worship. And he's saying that is not what Christ is about at all. It's about this. And it does kind of make you feel odd. Interesting. So what do we do with this passage? Okay. What do you say in a sermon? Okay, I'll say that. So, don't dwell on calling you stupid. Okay, I will work at not calling y'all stupid today. As a matter of fact, I will tell you the word stupid is not in this sermon at all.
Now, not focused on what Jesus was saying, but what Jesus the three things that he died and he rose again.
Yeah.
Something I can't find.
Life, death, resurrection.
Yeah, that's,
Life, death, resurrection.
that's hard to, that was so neat thinking, I don't have to
Yeah.
always think about
Yeah.
the word of God as far as memorizing verses and stuff, if I could just bring that to people.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah. that we are called to think about, oh, okay, you know, we are asked. Yeah, I mean, and truthfully, and Presbyterians, we're not people who openly talk to other people about our faith, right? We're just like, whoa, okay now, that's good. But there's also a notion about that too, because when we are talking about it, it sounds a little funky. I mean, yeah, we're asked to give our lives away because that's what Jesus did. Okay. Yeah. But that is our call, that this is the power of who we are. It may not seem like power to other people. It may not seem like what we should talk about. And some of the television preachers, that's not the power they have. That's why they have a jet and I don't. I mean, you know. But that this is ultimately, this is our call, and this is what Paul was telling this culture. This may seem really funky, but this is the power of God, this day and always. Oh, let's pray. Gracious God, we give thanks for your love and your mercy, and even the notion of what power really is to you compared to what power that we see people try to wield even in the church, but that you have called us to proclaim Christ and him crucified and to live that. May we be faithful.